Tamara, I guess first of all, would you mind just sharing with everyone a bit about yourself
Mhm.
and, what you get to do in this world with your work?
Doing something that I never thought I would be ending up doing at this point in my life.
Sure.
I became a primary school teacher. I did a 4-year teaching degree and became a teacher in 1999.
Mhm.
And then a couple of years later, I had a child.
Mhm.
And I was still working and as a casual teacher. And I started to think about what would I do with preschool for my daughter. Having a teaching background, it's just something that I overthink naturally because that's who I am. I'm a teacher. So I looked into Steiner education at first, and I found it really quite difficult to get some visitation of a local centre. So based on advice from somebody who I met through parenting, they said, have a look at Montessori. So when I went to call Montessori, they were very open, very welcoming. And then we went to have a visit with my then 2-year-old to see what the centre was like, 2.5-year-old. And it was brilliant. It was like a sea of people just like my daughter. So I knew she was going to fit straight in. And I became quite interested in the method because it aligned with what my principles were with teaching. So, which was quite nice that I had come to my own conclusions about education and then found something with 100 years of proven history, which was exactly the same, which, being a young teacher, you think you're going to change the world. So my ego went, oh, someone's already done everything.
Sure.
And but the school was really fantastic, and they asked if I could start a Montessori school here in Newcastle, which is nice to have in your 20s as a teacher, your late 20s. So I went, oh, this is quite good. Then found out I was the 7th teacher that they asked. And I went, oh, okay, makes it a bit more real. So the first thing you learn about Montessori education is to leave your ego at the door.
Sure.
And I think that at that point when I was starting the school and undergoing the training, I knew that if I was going to have another child, I'd have to have another child then, not when the whole school is, it was going to be a few years to find a place and retrofit things. And so I thought I'd quickly do that. And just at the time that we were realising that there were no buildings in Newcastle that were suitable, and that the project was very much up in the air, I became a single parent. And so all of that went out the window. And then within the next 3 months, I became a homeschooling parent because my clever eldest daughter was reading at kindergarten. She was already reading the first Harry Potter book.
Okay.
And we found a lot of issues with trying to make adjustments at school. And as a teacher, knowing the industry as I do,
Sure.
and what can and can't happen at schools, like schools can promise you everything, but you have to work with the teachers that are there. And they're a workplace. Fundamentally, yes, they are there for children for learning, but they are still there to deliver a program, and they're there for the people that work there as well. Yeah. So over the last 14 years, I've been home educating. And although I haven't been actively as a primary school teacher having my own class, I've still worked within the industry. So now I'm working at a university and I'm teaching teachers. Okay. So yeah, and specifically I was hired because I have had this experience of alternative education methods, and I've done a lot of online learning. I've helped a lot of people with online learning. So now I'm helping people with education outside of a traditional school system. Yeah. But also training those teachers who are going into those settings who could really benefit out of things like liaisoning with parents a lot more, and really opening up if you've got a child with additional needs and who require extra help. You really need to get to know the parents, because they're the people that have been with that child through all of their appointments. They're the key, and you need to have a good working relationship with parents. Yes. So at the very beginning, because that's the only way you're really going to help that child in a classroom. So that's a little bit about my professional and what I've done since. And what I've been doing over the last 13 years is run a business called Tutor Your Own Child. So I help parents who either use the school or don't use the school to find education solutions for their children. So
amazing.
yeah. And this time it's been pretty a shock to everybody who's new to this experience,
Yes.
who's accidentally found themselves in the situation that they're in. But it's a very common story for me on individual levels. Now it's just a big mass of people doing it at the same time.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And with that incredible experience, there's so much information that I'm sure parents are going to want to know. So if you are watching, post any questions that you've got, because this is a great opportunity to have any of your concerns answered by Tamara. So I guess, Tamara, first of all, I'd really love to hear from you with all of the families that you're supporting, and potentially, I mean, the new families that might be coming to you during this time. You know, what concerns are you seeing? What questions are you being asked from families at the moment?
So I've got a lot of home educators who are my clients. I help a lot of people when they're choosing to do this for their child, or they have to do it for their child, and it's a really tough time for these people, because often they are the only person within their social group that is home educating. It's a deeply personal decision for a family to do this, but everyone seems to have an opinion on it. And everyone is quick to say, but what about socialization? No, you can't do that. How are you going to cope? And a lot of fears get put into that. And so you develop this shield as such about your decision, about your child, about your relationship, and what you know to be true. And you still have to jump through the hoop of registration, which is scary to have, especially in New South Wales, where we have someone come to visit your house and they inspect you and your plan, and it feels like you're going to a principal's office.
Sure.
So it's quite scary. So to all of a sudden have everybody saying that they're homeschooling, I've witnessed a lot of defensiveness from people who are actually home educators, who are saying, no, what you're doing is not home education. What you're doing is distance education. It's a completely different situation. Because when you do decide to home educate, so you're not going to use the school, the first thing that happens is all of your support goes. You don't have any funding. You don't have any access to a lot of the materials that schools provide. You've got to self-fund. There's no funding for it. And often you have to forgo somebody's wage in the family. So I've seen a lot of defensiveness because of, you know, the hard yards that other people have already trod, and you know, the misunderstanding. So the first thing I would say is, at the bottom of that is a misunderstanding of what the terms mean.
Sure.
Because a lot of people are saying that people are now homeschooling.
Sure.
And what I've seen with people who are in this situation brand new because of COVID, it's an unnecessary stress for these people to then go and seek homeschooling supplies and blogs and see what's possible, because home educators are not even home educating at the moment. We're not free to go out in the community. Home education is basically, it's a do-it-yourself, choose your own adventure education within the community. It's learning about the world from the world and being in the world. Sure. And so we're all stuck at home too. So we're not home educating the way we usually do. We're not, my son and I aren't going to PCYC. We're not going for our local meetup every week. Sure. We're not having friends over to do play dates. So we're finding we feel a lot of the stresses that every other family would be going through right now. So the first thing I would say is, you know, please take that weight off your shoulders that you have to be a homeschooler, because no one expects you to. And the homeschooling community, the other thing we would really like, apart from the defensiveness, there's another half of what we've felt is, and certainly what I've witnessed, is our hearts are breaking for all these families who have been put in this situation out of necessity, not choice. And we are there to support you, for sure. Like, there's a lot of people who want to help, but we don't want you to assume that what you're doing is a good example of homeschooling, because it's not. What you're basically doing is what's called distance education, and you would be doing this particular type of distance education if you're living in a remote area. So if you're away from lots of people, you can't go and visit people during the week. You're maybe living in a remote part of Australia and going through school of the air. That's a bit more like what families are going to be encountering. So you've got a school who's delivering a program and that you've got to meet those requirements. Okay. But I have got a way to help families relieve the stress of it. After saying all of this, you know, that there's distance education, which is what you've got a school involved. They're going to dictate a lot of what you have to do. And then home education, which is you've left the school system and you're choosing your own adventure, which means you make up the plan, you decide what you're going to do during the day. Yes. And you can have a go at this during the holidays, but come at the end of the holidays and school goes back, you've got this, you've got the distance education. Sure. And don't overload yourself with all the extracurricular stuff that you could be doing and stress out yourself, because this is going to be a new way of relating to your school. And that communication between you and school is going to be the fundamental to success for your children.
Okay. So I guess let's go into, you know, the distance ed side of things. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I guess the concern with a lot of my clients and parents is, you know, the pressure to complete everything, the pressure to still have the child do all of their homework, all of their tasks at home. How many hours should it take? Should it not take? You know, how am I meant to be the teacher of my child? I'm not a teacher. Mm-hmm. You know, all of these concerns and questions are going on in parents' minds. And I suppose I'd love to hear your take on those questions and concerns for families at the moment.
Yeah, sure. So there's two parts of education. There's the input in and the input coming out. So there's the teaching and then there's the learning. And schools are providing teaching, and it really depends on you whether the child is free to learn. So rather than feeling as though you have to be the teacher, step out of that and recognise that the program that you've opted into by using a school, the teachers are the teachers. The school is where the teaching input's coming from. What your job is to come underneath that child that you know better than anybody knows your child, and to support them with what they need. So read your child and their ability to learn. You don't need to know the lesson being taught. You don't need to understand it. You need to know how to read your child. So if your child is squirming because you know that they're really thirsty or they're hungry or they're tired or they need to go to the toilet, you bring into the advocate and say, you know, Jess, do you need to go to the bathroom right now? And say, you know, and help that child, because they'll be so attentive to their work, especially if it's video, if they're watching a video of the teacher. You know, in a classroom, they're used to that environment. At home, this is a new environment, new setting. And so just as you used to preempt when your child needed to go to the toilet or have something to eat or have a nap when they were younger, read your child. It doesn't matter what their age are. They can be K to 12, and help them through navigating this new method of education that they're experiencing. So, and this is one of the reasons I called my business Tutor Your Own Child, not Teach Your Own Child. Because you don't need to be a teacher to home educate. Okay. You need to know how to find resources, and you need to know your child and their learning needs.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a really important point there then. Okay, so you don't need to be a teacher. You just need to know how to find resources.
Yep.
You need to know how your child learns.
Yes, and the thing is, with this particular time, you're doing distance education, the teachers are going to be finding the resources. So you can take a big weight off your shoulders, please, and wait until, sure, do some stuff in the holidays if you want to, but don't feel as though you need to be a home educator. And just I'm just going to backtrack a little bit so that people don't get confused by these terms. Home education is an umbrella term, and under that is all the different methods. So homeschooling, which is a kind of like a school at home, but parents still choose. That's homeschooling. Unschooling is learning that it doesn't look like school. And natural learning and eclectic learning is picking lots of different ideas from places. Charlotte Mason's one method, Steiner, Montessori, classical education, biblical education is another. So there's lots of different ways that people home educate. But in every state and territory, you still have registration requirements. So all of us still meet our state and territory requirements, just as schools have to register their programs. we register directly with those registration bodies.
Okay. So I guess for parents who are concerned about the completion rate, and I guess what I'm hearing you say there is that, you know, all of the homeschooling umbrellas, all of that. So, you know, you're not spending 8 hours a day.
No.
Educating.
Oh, no.
So I guess.
Yeah, one-on-one, we usually do about 2 or 3 hours at the most.
Yeah.
And often that's spread through the day if the child's younger, because keeping a child attention. And speaking as a teacher as well, I'm not going to teach 6 hours a day. Take 1 hour out for lunch and recess straight away, then take out assemblies, then take out walking to class, then take out talking and getting people settled, then take out roll call, news, and then you've got all group activities which not all children get to participate in. They are either part of the audience or they're out the front sharing.
Sure.
And then you may then do everybody doing a worksheet, for example, at the same time. Children are going to finish at different times. Then they'll have to go on to other work. You know, is there any work that you haven't completed while you wait for other people?
Yes.
So you usually have about 10 minutes one-on-one per child per week. You usually have 2 to 3, possibly 4 if it's a great day, of learning where you're teaching and the children are learning. But don't kid yourself that all the children are learning. You know, there is some children that are not turned on to the learning. They've either learnt it, they're disengaged, it's boring, it's not their learning style that they prefer. So you've got all that going on in the classroom. At home, you are targeted to how that child learns. It's one-on-one. You could finish just as much work it would take you 3 or 4 hours at school in half an hour to an hour. I've seen people who have finished all of the maths for high school in 6 months. So years 7 to 12 in 6 months, because they just plowed through everything. At home, you get a lot more done in a short amount of time, and then you can get on with your own activities. But that's for home education. It will be completely up to your school and your teacher and how they deliver it, to how much time people are expecting your child to be attentive to their lessons. It's not up to you.
Right.
And I have also heard a lot of people say, well, if I'm not happy with the way the school's going to go, I'm just going to register to homeschool because I'm going to be home anyway. Okay. What I say to these parents, before you make that decision to jump ship, there are some things you can do to negotiate this with the school before you jump ship. But remember, if you do jump ship, you lose access to all of those resources. You lose access to that funding. Think of all the children that are pulled out of school because they have additional needs. All that funding that the school got for them goes. Parents don't take that with them. It belongs to the school. And if the child's not there, the school loses it too. So before you make a decision to opt out of school systems and go and register for home education, just take that into account. Because there's so many resources we have to pay for because we don't have licenses like schools have.
Sure. Okay.
And there are other options, like you can go to university without having to do the HSC, for example. There's a lot of pathways in life. School's only one option. There's a lot of other ways you can get through. But and I'm certainly supportive of whatever works, basically, if school works or home ed works or whatever. But as far as like the expectations at school, your schools right now are scrambling. They're working really, really hard. They really care about the ability for the child to learn. And they are learning themselves, teachers, on how to deliver teaching across this new platform they've never done before, most times. So they're undergoing intensive training right now. And they then have to rewrite their program to do a different delivery method that they've never done before. So their intention is for your child to learn. They're not going to get it perfect 100% of the time. And initially, they're probably going to be quite a few hit and miss situations. The best thing you can do is come underneath your child to support them and build your relationship with the school. So find out how the school is going to operate this new thing. If things change week after week, you know, hopefully you can just have the grace to let them change because they're trying to find what works.
Sure.
You know, it's going to be messy to begin with.
Sure. I think what I would like, I wonder if you could speak on learning styles.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, this is maybe something that a lot of parents have never considered before, don't really know how to work it out,
Mm-hmm.
Have struggled even at homework time, even when their child has been attending school. Maybe their teachers don't even know their learning style because they have got a classroom of 30 children or so. So I guess let's tackle that, because that might help parents at home being able to educate their child in a way that helps them, and that also this will help the child then in not feeling so much pressure and stress as well.
And they might be a teacher of 30, but they also might be a teacher of 150 if they're a high school teacher or more. So we all have different learning styles. We all have different personalities. We all have different things going on. You can put it into boxes of saying someone's kinesthetic because they need to move in order to learn. They need to actually do the actions. You can say that they're auditory because they need to hear the information, or visual because they need to see the information. But that's a very simplistic version of learning styles. Learning styles are unique to the human experiencing it. Even twins have different needs. So if you've got a child who fidgets a lot, for example, maybe they do need to move their bodies in order for the brain pathways to connect. So put them on an exercise ball, or let them lay down on the ground and let them wiggle. Try to think of your child when they were first born in the first 3 years had a particular temperament. That's sort of where you need to anchor yourself when starting to work out what their learning style was. Were they a child who you could drop your hand and you knew that the child was going to be right there next to you? Mm-hmm. Even if you were, you know, buying something from the shop and you drop their hand and you turn around and the 2, 3, 4-year-old was still standing there. Now that's someone who can probably follow good patterns and follow boundaries quite well, you know, who really liked that sort of thing, who was quite happy to be near you. Did you have a child that was racing away constantly and it almost seemed like their ears didn't work all the time and things like that? You need to make that connection with that human really tight so that they get you and you get them, and it's a lot more intense. But keep that short because it can be quite exhausting. So the way in which the actual human learns is autonomously. We all decide to learn what we want to learn at the time. You could be sitting in a maths class and getting all these workbooks around you, but unless you want to learn, you're not going to learn. So this is why I'm saying there's 2 different parts to it. There's the teaching, which, you know, you can, what they say, you know, you can peg marshmallows at someone's head, but it doesn't mean they're eating. You can put all the worksheets and all color-ins and all sorts of games, but it doesn't mean someone's learning. No. A learner has to want to learn, and learners learn because they feel safe and secure and loved, and they have human connections, and that there are big people who are taking care of them. They feel safe. So what I would say is a way in which you can get to this. I want to give people practical ways to actually how to calm their house down and how to make this work.
Yeah, that would be wonderful, please.
Okay, so so the first thing that you need to do is to really, what a lot of the talks have been about, is to check in on yourself and connect within yourself. And you need to do a brain dump of everything out of your head, because when you come to helping a child to learn, it's emotive and it's intellectual and it's a lot of head talk. It's a lot of head chatter, your fears and your hopes and your dreams and everything. Plus you've got 1,000 different things going on at the same time. So do a brain dump on a bit of paper, write down absolutely everything that you're thinking of, as crazy as it seems, and imagine that you're going to take what is suitable off this page and then burn the bit of paper. So you absolutely put down everything, even stuff you would never want people to read. So really get it off your head. And then what you need to do is gather the actual useful data that you need to deal with this issue. So with distance education. So you need to know what schools are going to require, what your teacher requires, and also then what your children need. That's a list. So you put a heading, and so it's ready to go when you get the information. When you do have that one-on-one where your child says, well, I've always felt embarrassed that I've never been able to get 100% in the spelling list. They want to feel success at spelling. That's one of their needs. I can never remember my 6 or 7 times tables. We need to practice on those things.
Sure.
I'm really worried that assessments are due and that I'm not going to get the result in HSC that I thought I was going to have. That's one of their learning needs that you need to deal with. So brain dump and then collect your data on a bit of paper so it's outside of your head. Really important to be free to connect with the child, get it all out of your head. So the next thing that you need to do to get this data is to connect with your child on their level, which means playing Lego with them. What game do you want mummy to play with you today or dad to play with you today? If they want you, if they're lost in the world of Fortnite or Minecraft or something like that, get in there and play, have a go, admit that you're a noob, admit that you're going to suck at it, that's fine. Yeah. Just go in and connect with them on their level with what they're interested in, because it's a very powerful thing to have a parent who is actually interested in you and what you like.
Absolutely.
What gets you going. And you need to have this level of connection with your children. Yeah. Prior to this time in your life, you used to school and you used to have to herd your children quite a lot, manage them on the outside in order to get them to go to school. And at school, they're herded as well, because that's the nature of school. The part of home education that you need to understand is that relationships change when the education is in the home. Education becomes part of the family dynamic. Yeah. So you don't have to herd them anymore. You can start to slow down from the herd mentality to navigating them, managing them, to get on their level. Let's work together, because the amazing thing about children doing work is that if you don't have that peer pressure at school, if you don't have a teacher making you do work, people say, oh, I'm never going to be able to make my child do any work at home. If the child is choosing to do the work, they will do it. So you want to get to the part where they're choosing to do the work. So once you've connected with them, you've really checked in, you're back into that bonding that you had within that, the period of time before they went to school in the first place. You're back on that level. You can joke around Fortnite. You can joke around Minecraft. You can say, hey, how's your village going? Have you got some villagers yet? Things like that. Sure. Once you're on that level, and really give it a whole day just to connect with them. Sure. Don't just think it's going to happen in 10 minutes. Give it days. Then have a meeting where every member of the family can attend the meeting at the same time for up to an hour. Okay. Preferably 20 minutes, but it's going to take longer. It might take 2 hours. Have some snacks. And I'm just going to reiterate what Zoe Martin said about being intentional. This is where you're going to be intentional. So the meeting has to cover what's going to be happening in the next week. This is so that children know what's coming up, because children who don't know what's happening freak out. Parents who don't know what's happening parent from emotions. Yeah. You need to have a plan. So have a meeting where you're looking at the next week coming up, and things are going to change. So wait till the next week to have a meeting about the following week, because you don't know how things are going to change. Have a week meeting where you've got to book in any commitments. If the school teachers say, they expect your child to be at the computer at 9 o'clock, that's a commitment. If there's a play date that a child really wants to be part of at a particular time, that's a commitment to another person. So put that in. Also put in, when are you going to do food shopping and how? How are we going to navigate that? Is there going to be a list on the fridge for what food do you need? Any play dates that are booked in for Zoom, any things to do with grandparents that need to be booked in. And that's all of the solid have-tos. And then you might have a look at what the school requires as well, but the older children might be able to go and find out that information for themselves and bring it back. The younger children probably won't, so you'll need to do that. And then have a look at where there's opportunities to work together to lighten the load. So if that child who's really, worried about mathematics or spelling, and say, well, on those times, I'm going to be with you next to you. So if you need help, I'm going to be there. And the older child might say, well, I'm going to need help to stay on track. And say, okay, well, show me what that looks like. Do you want me to check in with you at 3 o'clock every day to see what you're up to, or whatever works for them, get them to choose it.
Sure.
And then at that meeting, have a look at everything that people want to do during the week. So everyone gets to have a turn of saying what they actually want to do that week, whether it's a play date or getting ahead on work, or I want to stay up until 4 a.m, play Fortnite with my friends. Okay, well, how's that going to impact the next day? I really want to have time with my sibling this week. Okay, well, let's negotiate that. What's going to work for both of you? And put that into the schedule as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then offer each of the children a time when they can book you in for an appointment. Mm-hmm. And the reason for this is that other children in the family will interrupt you unless it's a fair deal for everybody and they know that this is actually an appointment, a scheduled appointment, and they have equal access to this sort of thing. So it might be reading every night. That's what they need. I was listening to Zoe about that. And it might be, I would really want you to watch this movie that you've always said you hate, but I really love it. It's my favourite. Will you watch it with me? Sure. Things like that.
Sure.
As the parents, you need to book in your thing too. Yeah. So you put in, okay, well, on Friday at this time, this is open for me. So I'm going to spend 2 hours on my own, and this is my time. And everybody gets a go. And it's got to be fair for everyone. Then you put that schedule on the fridge or somewhere where everyone can see it. So there's an expectation that everybody's got something to do. There's free time around that, but everyone knows what's coming up, so they know what to expect. And that decreases the stress in the house quite a bit, because this is a very frantic time where we don't know what's happening day to day. And just having that plan each week and knowing that they're going to sit down the beginning of the next week, whatever day that works for everybody, that yes, you'll be able to, you don't get what you want this week, well, let's discuss it the following week, what worked, what didn't work. So another thing is to also have a whiteboard or a bit of paper somewhere where people can write down during the week things that aren't in the plan but they would like to come up in the plan.
Sure.
So as it occurs to you, get it off your head and put it there. And so this is a very intentional way of setting up your week. And that flows into what I wanted to say about the actual learning lessons. When you get stuck with a child and they have work come home and you do not understand what it is, and they're asking you for help and you're feeling like, I'm not cut out for this,
yes,
which is a big concern of people, is the secret to teaching is that everything has to have a purpose. So if we were making friendship bracelets, for example, the purpose is to learn how to make friendship bracelets, how to make them attractive and get better at them, and then how to give them to friends and share that with other people. So it's a craft skill, it's a creative arts thing, but it's also got to do with relationships with other people and that sort of thing. There's a purpose to every single learning activity. The purpose of learning your times tables, for example, could go into all areas of mathematics. It goes into algebra later on. It can go into quadratic equations. Like, there's a purpose to it. A purpose for when you're sitting down with a child and they're doing some work and you don't understand it. Ask the child, why does the teacher want you to learn this? What is it about this bit of work that they really want you to understand? Get your child to explain. And if they don't know, then ask the teacher. That's what they're there for. And if your teacher's not available, ask Google. So put it into Google and you'll come up with something about what it is and how a teacher approached it, and you can understand it. And do this process with your child. Never be embarrassed that you don't know something. Show them how to research to find out answers. When I was teaching, I always used to walk around with a dictionary, because I never wanted people in the class to think that everybody, adults, especially teachers, but adults know how to spell everything. Yes. They don't. No. And now that we've got spell checker, it's even more the case. So it's really important to get real, get down on their level, connect with where they're at, be their advocate. Yes. Don't think about top-down management kind of hierarchies.
Yeah.
Sure, be the steerer of the ship to steer it away from rocks. Be in charge. Be the person who has the boat going, but be a charismatic leader. Be friends with your children. This is the time where you need to be on their side, because everybody in the house has to work together to make this happen.
Yeah.
And if a person is really freaking out, that's an emotion that needs to come out, and you need to do that in a safe way until it's all out, and then they can move on to the next stage. You know, we're not going to move forward and help learning if everything is chaotic and everyone's angry with everyone. Yeah.
Yes, perfect. Really great practical tips, Tamara. That's really helpful. And I guess a lot of my following, they have children with complex needs and, with certain diagnoses, and, they struggle at school at the moment, and some are going to thrive being home.
They do.
Thrive.
That's the biggest thing that I find with children who are on spectrum, especially who come into home education. Yes. There was a time when the funding in New South Wales for schools, I think it's been fixed a little bit better now, but we were always getting children of a particular age starting, and they were always on the spectrum. And it was like, what's going on in our schools? Sure. And it was because the funding cut out at that particular age.
Right.
So they weren't getting the additional support, so they had to come home. And so many times, like 99%, 9 times out of 10, like a massive amount of people were saying that their child just does not have the issues with learning anymore. And it was the structure of the school that was the problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And do you know what? I think that's even really a nice point to make, is for families that are concerned with their children that have complex needs or special needs or whatever the case may be, that is actually what you see. It's certainly what I see within a lot of the clients that I work with too. So if you are concerned about that, about, the complexities around, well, how do I meet my child's needs in a learning sense when I'm so busy trying to meet them outside of that, and it's a bit more complicated than my other children or other children that aren't on the spectrum, whatever the case may be, that actually this could be the most incredible opportunity that you've experienced.
Yeah, this is what the home educators want to get across to families more than anything, is that this is a really great opportunity for you to have a go of really connecting with your children as learners, not just people that you have to manage because lives are so busy.
Yes.
They themselves have done this. They have used a school, been working full time, and they have to stop their life, stop going to work, start working from home, have their children home all of a sudden because of a necessity. And then they discover that if they had done this from the start, they wouldn't have had as many issues.
Yes.
One of the biggest things that people say to me when they leave school after using school for a few years is, I wish I did this from the beginning. Sure. Because you're able to meet the students' needs. Now, not every child is like this. Some children are really freaking out and they miss school. And I myself prefer to have gone to school than being home educated. But that's got to do with parents. But whereas my son's never been to school and he would never like to go to school, he's always preferred that. Sure. So there's different styles for everybody, but one of the things you're going to find is that children are going to be more relaxed.
Yes.
If you have a child that misses school, if you've got the structure and they know that they can still do all of the school stuff and still be, online to see their friends as well, or phone, if the internet's not great for you, phone chats, just like back in the day when we used to talk on the phone, have that there for them. But you'll find that children on a whole are going to be a lot less stressed. But the big thing is that if Mama Bear and Papa Bear aren't happy and relaxed, they will pick up on it. And children know when someone is lying.
Yes. And
they know everything that is on the emotional level of where people are at. And a lot of adults have forgotten what it's like to be a child. And if you have a child who feels very, you don't know them, they're disconnected, you just don't get where they're at, go to their level, meet the child where the child is at, then work then from that, and then the child will get to know you and where you're actually coming from, rather than it being a battle.
Yes.
So
perfect. That's definitely something that I speak with clients about too, is really meeting the child where they're at. And my philosophy is, unless we do that, then we're never going to see them. We're just not. They're never going to be found for who they truly are unless we meet them where they're at. And we can be concerned about the curriculum, we can be concerned about the pressures and all of that. However, if you're not meeting them where they're at, they're just simply never going to achieve what you, the school, or they want to.
Oh, absolutely.
Pressure puts out the learning ability, the want to learn, the pressure, right? It's all of the fear response, everything. The body is tapped out. It's over. Cortisol is in here. Nothing's going to the long-term memory. All of those things. Yeah,
that's when you've got too much teaching and not enough space for learning. So one of the terms that is used in Montessori, but it's definitely something that can be used right now, is to have freedom within limits. So that meeting of writing down that schedule, that's your limits, that's your boundaries, that's what your expectations are for the week. The rest of the time, let them do what they want to do, and observe them as well with what they're doing. Get to know them in their own natural, relaxed kind of state. Really read who they are. And the whole leave your ego at the door is also so important at this time, because you're going to have this expectation that unless you do all of these things, it's going to be, unless I find the resources, unless I, do all of this stuff, everything's going to crumble. And that's not where children want you to be. They're not going to, a worksheet isn't learning. A worksheet is a device that you use when you've got a classroom of 30 who all need to do the same work at the same time, because that's what is required by school guidelines and policies. I don't want to use a worksheet for how to learn road rules. I want to go in the car with a child to show them all of the different traffic. I don't want them to do a worksheet on farm life. I want to go on an excursion to farm life. Well, home educators are using worksheets right now because we can't go out and learn from the world directly. So, but it's not, that's just one teaching device. That doesn't mean the children are going to learn it. It's not necessarily the best quality. Like there's lots of resources. There's, some fantastic manipulatives. There's Maths You See is one of the things a lot of people use. And that's teaching all the stuff they teach in school, but rather than using worksheets, they use hands-on manipulatives. And it makes a lot more sense to a child to be able to feel and touch and hold it when they're that age, rather than doing it on worksheets. So you've got all these different teaching modalities, like lots of teaching materials, but unless you actually understand how your child is going to learn best, because that one child could say, I don't really want to be playing with manipulatives. I just give me a worksheet so I can get it done and get on with Minecraft and play. Hey, if that's where they're at, let them. That's great.
Sure.
And the thing is that if you sit down with your child and have a look at the material first from school, because you're using a school, so you don't need all of that stuff. Find out what school's going to give you for free first. Sit down with the child and say, well, what do you reckon? How's this going to work? What do you think of this? And as the more autonomy they have, the more ability to make a choice within that. The more they're likely to do it. During that meeting, it's really key to say, well, these are the things from school that you need to do. How do you feel about that? What do you think about the expectations? Sit with them to try to get it all done. But if it doesn't get done, you're not a failure. It means that the teaching resource that the child is using hasn't hit the learner. If the learner was present, if they were well-fed, well-watered, didn't need to go to the toilet, they were attentive and just didn't get it, just means they have to have another lesson in that. Teachers don't teach things once.
Yes, thank you. Yes, great point.
It's okay not to understand it the first time, or, we don't just sit in the back of the car and then know how to drive, from once. We have lots of practices. And the other thing I want to say is that mistakes are learning opportunities. If you make a mistake with a child, if you blow your top, sit down, own it. That was me having a tantrum. I'm really sorry if I was scary. okay, may I please start again, because that was uncalled for, it's not helpful. You know, that can be a huge turnaround for a lot of families at this point. Yeah. You're all together in the one house, you don't have the normal dynamics, you don't have them going away from you to get that respite. This might be the time where you actually get to really connect with your children, and when they do go back to school, you can be much better a support when they have homework coming home, and you're better connected with the school and you know where they're at.
Yes, absolutely.
And the other thing is, the other outside of behind the children is get a good working relationship with your school and the teachers, because there's a lot of research that supports this. The better the communication between the parent and the teacher and the child, the better the child's learning outcomes, the better their test results are, the better their mental health is, because of that communication. Because a child feels it. If you've got battles between the adults that I'm from and the adults that I have to deal with through the day, if there's a battle there, they feel like they have to pick and choose. It's almost like
schools parents, separated parents.
It's the same as separated parents, exactly.
Yeah.
That are hostile towards each other.
Yeah.
So use this time as an opportunity also to improve your relationship with a school, and respect that they did not see this coming.
Yes.
This is not how teachers thought their year would be.
Yes.
You know, they've got wonderful things planned for the year that have got to be thrown out the window. They're disappointed too. And a lot of them have their own children that they have to also educate.
Sure. Yeah. So, thanks, Tamara. Yeah.
There's time for a lot of grace.
A time for a lot of grace, a time for a lot of opportunity, time for a lot of connection, and a time for a lot of learning. Not just but really learning about each other, learning about your children, learning about yourself too. This is an opportunity that you may never get again. So that's certainly what I'm hearing from you as well. Now I just want to make sure to see if we've got any questions, Tamara. Okay, I think we're all good. Everyone's just really happy with the information and really enjoying what you've got to say. So that's wonderful.
Oh, good.
So I guess in starting to wrap up, Tamara, is there anything that you feel like hasn't been touched on? The overarching principle that you feel like parents just really need to understand or accept right now in terms of taking off any pressure or removing some stresses that they might be feeling?
My big thing I really want parents to understand is that the teacher, the program that your child is going to be having is still on the teacher's shoulders. Mm-hmm. We don't design our own classrooms in isolation. We set a plan based on the syllabus curriculum of our area, and we do it in conjunction with the rest of the school. Mm-hmm. So our classrooms often dovetail into each other. And in high school, there's departments that do that but there's still this overarching, understanding of who the children are and understanding of where the needs are and where focus needs to be. So a lot of people have done a lot of work already on what your children need to learn about. Take that off your shoulders to think that you need to reinvent the wheel. It's already there. They're just working out how to move this onto an online platform.
Sure.
Give them time to stuff it up. Give them opportunities to make mistakes and learn from them. Don't feel as though your child is going to be behind. I've seen almost entirely happens this way, that a child is removed from a school for a couple of years. When they go back, they're ahead. And that's just through, it's even through unschooling. And the reason for that is when you have communication with children that's real, that's the same as if school didn't exist, or when they leave school and you just, how we talk within society normally. When children are welcomed into that world, they are much more mature. When they are policed by adults, when they are ushered around by others, where other people make decisions on when they can go to the toilet, not, you lower their maturity level. This is a time where your children go to the toilet when they need to go to the toilet. One of the things my children said when we decided to homeschool, because my daughter had tried school, a few times. We started home education and she's like, free the we. I can
Wow.
we what I want. You know, just that is like
saying that one little thing, you
yeah,
know,
totally.
it's a huge power thing for a child, you know, just to at least listen to their bodies. And I mean, if we're not listening to our bodies, that leads to a whole different array of
And the thing is, you just got a handle on toilet training,
sure,
and then you're not free to listen to the body's needs.
Sure.
And believe me, teachers are frustrated by it too.
Sure.
They really are. The
Sure.
system that you need to work in when you're a teacher is not ideal. It was designed by people in Prussia in the late 1800s, and we try our best to make it more applicable to modern day. But it's got a lot of faults in it, and you're able to remove a lot of those stresses. Enjoy that.
Yeah.
You don't need to make it perfect. Yeah. Please don't try to make your homeschooling Pinterest worthy. Don't do that. It'll break your own heart. Yeah. Home educators want you to know that you don't set yourself up to break your own heart. Yeah. You know, you have the backing of a school. We don't. Yeah. You've got a lot of support. We have to create ourselves. And if you do feel like you definitely want to leave the school system and you definitely need to home educate, there is a community all around the world. Yes. And it's a very supportive community, very welcoming. Everybody does it differently. Yeah. There is no one size fits all. There's always support there. But you're doing distance education in isolation at the moment, unfortunately. That's just the way it is. So there's still a lot of support out there. I'm one of the admins on a Facebook group of 15,000 people or something, of people just doing it for this reason. There's a few groups actually.
And what's that Facebook group, just in case people would like some more support and to be in touch with you further?
It is School at Home with an @ symbol, due to virus and school closures in Australia.
Amazing. Okay, great resource. Thank you.
That's right. And it's really important to find something that is applicable to your country and to your area. But your school is going to be different and your classroom is going to be different. It's not a one size fits all there either. And also, every single syllabus and curriculum is available for free online. So when in doubt, you can always look it up from the book that the teachers write their program on.
Amazing. Wow.
Everyone's always had free access to the curriculum. You can always go look it up.
That's incredible. Yeah. I wonder how many people did or didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, not everyone knows.
No, not at all.
So there's in the syllabus itself, there is, each state and territory has like a little version of the Australian national curriculum.
Sure.
But there is a brief overview. There's all these technical edubabble, eduspeak. And then there's also little examples of everything. So and it's like a recipe that you follow. So when in doubt, you can just go straight to it and follow it like a recipe.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, Tamara, thank you. There has been such incredible tips and help and support in what you've just shared. And I know this is going to be just an absolute huge relief and so informative for many, many, many families. I have been finishing off every talk with 2 questions. So the first question is for you on a personal level, on a work level, you know, in your world, what has been the opportunities for you in the last couple of weeks with all of this crazy stuff that's happening?
Okay, so I've had the opportunity to witness it's not a fantasy. It's not a fantasy at all. It's a sort of a what if. So the idea of what would happen if schools didn't exist. Okay. You know, as a teacher, I've always questioned that. What would happen? And I knew I was going to be a teacher right from the age of 3. I've been wanting to be a primary school teacher.
Okay.
So it's one of the things that has been in the back of my mind all of my life. What would happen if schools didn't exist?
Sure.
And globally.
Yeah.
So that's what's been in my mind.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, and also because I work in the area of comparative and international education as well with my research, I've seen how other school systems around the world have dealt with this. And there's a lot of countries who their care of the child is a lot more complete. So, for instance, in Singapore, the schools remained open a lot of the time, but every single beginning of day, children had their temperature read. They had to give any symptoms that they had. Everybody was dressed in PPE. Who were there, they wouldn't allow, if a child was sick, they had to go home and they had to stay home. So there's been a lot of, for me, it's been interesting because I've looked at the way the different education systems have handled this situation.
Sure. Yeah, amazing. And I guess for you, Tamara, what does a happy home look and feel like to you?
When my children are smiling.
Yeah.
If they're happy, it's working.
Sure. Yep. Beautiful.
And it might look like a mess to somebody else, but if they're happy with themselves, then it's working. Because children at the end of the day want to get on with their lives, and they want to feel like the people who invited them to this shindig called life actually want them and like them.
Yes.
And when my children feel like they are wanted and they are liked and they like themselves, then that's what makes me happy.
Yeah, what a beautiful explanation of that. That's beautiful, Tamara. Thank you for sharing that. And if people are interested to find out more about your work, what you do, the support you're providing elsewhere, where is the best place to find you?
2 places at the moment. Through my business, I've got a Facebook page for it called Tutor Your Own Child. And that's where I have education consults. So that's what I provide. And the other one is at the Australian Homeschooling Summit, which is happening in May. Amazing. So there's about 30 presentations on all areas of homeschooling and unschooling and all sorts of things like home education.
Sure.
And I'll be there, and I'm already answering questions of people who are coming along to that summit. It was meant to be in March, but because of this, we've postponed it to May. So you can definitely find me in there with about 20 to 21 other people answering questions.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Tamara. Well, for those of you that have joined, pop any comments, queries, questions, concerns in the comments. Let us know what you thought of this, and very interested to hear your thoughts. And thank you for tuning in on a Sunday afternoon. And I know, this is just going to be so helpful. So Tamara, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for being here, supporting families and all you're doing. So I thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Yeah. And have a wonderful Sunday afternoon.
You too.
Yeah. Bye, Tamara. Bye, everyone.
Bye.